Folks, it is report card time, and we're going to talk to Tyler Horka from Blue and Gold, so he can give his offensive grades for Notre Dame through 4 games. Again, Notre Dame's bye week. The Irish are off this Saturday and hit the field next Saturday in Las Vegas against BYU. Please hit the thumbs up on this video, of course, and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get all of the Notre Dame football coverage and recruiting content that we have here on our Blue and Gold YouTube channel. Of course, go to blueandgold.com, $1 for 1 year of premium access. So, yeah, Tyler's been writing these report card articles all week at Blue and Gold, and it's a little slower around here because, we don't have our normal flow of, Marcus Freeman press conference coverage. And so coming up with a creative content idea here. So, yeah, we're going to discuss the grades that you put into these articles. And quarterback, you went with a C plus. I don't know what grade you could have given that wouldn't be, maybe not controversial is the right word, but get a reaction out of people. But I think C plus I think it's fair. So give us your reaction on this one.
Yeah, it's a complicated grade, right? Because you had Tyler Buchner start the first 2 games and really play the first 2 games. Drew Pine only played a couple series in that game against Marshall. And then you had Drew Pine start the last 2 games. So it's almost like, do you grade Tyler Buchner's 2 games and then you grade Drew Pine's? Because if you're only grading Drew Pine's starts, I mean, it's an A, right? Drew Pine has played grade A football, if you will, in the last 2 games. And I know that the defenses, Cal's not great. Justin Wilcox is a defensive-minded head coach, but is still a little limited personnel-wise. And then North Carolina is North Carolina. But you have to go back and look at those first 2 games. And when you're putting one letter grade on the entirety of the 4 games, Notre Dame quarterback play was not good. And it wasn't all Tyler Buchner. The offensive line struggled to start, couldn't run the ball, and that's what Notre Dame wants to do is run the ball. So that didn't help out Tyler Buchner at all. But then he threw a couple of really bad interceptions against Marshall. Drew Pine threw an interception against Marshall. So, yes, the last 2 games have been great. I would give those 2 games an A for Drew Pine. But that, factors in a D probably if you look at the first 2 games, including Pine's 2 series in that game. He tossed an interception. So I think there's a lot of – and I wrote this in the article – there's a lot of room for improvement here. If Pine keeps playing the way that he has, then, like I said, he's playing A football right now.
Maybe the last 6 quarters, or 7 quarters into that first quarter against Cal was abysmal.
Right.
But it's something like if you put aside Notre Dame's just like kneeling the ball to end the game or just wasting clock, Notre Dame is scoring almost in the past 6 quarters. They've scored almost every single time they've had the ball. So and that's pretty much all you can ask for. Going to the running backs, I think B plus is fair as well. It's definitely been a strong point of the Notre Dame offense.
Yeah, if you take out the 1 game against Ohio State when the Notre Dame rushing attack had 30 carries for 76 yards, it's been a staple of the offense, and they've been able to use all 3 guys outside of that Cal game where Logan Diggs was out with an injury. And in that game, you might say, okay, the Notre Dame game against North Carolina, that was the best rushing game of the year by far. They rushed for 287 yards, I think it was. We're able to use all 3 guys. Audric Estime over 7 yards per carry. But the way the Notre Dame running backs gutted out that game against Cal, I think was almost equally as impressive because, like we said, Cal's defense is a little bit better than North Carolina's, probably a lot bit better, even if it isn't one of the better Power 5 defenses in the country. The way Estime and Tyree ran 35 times for, I think it was over 150 yards against Cal, very impressive. So to me, this group is a B plus because they're not perfect. They could be a little bit better. You have to factor in the 76-yard performance against Ohio State, which Tyler Buchner had a lot of those yards too. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but he was a part of that rushing attack. That was a bad game for the Notre Dame rushing attack. But the last 3 have been pretty good, and I like these running backs. I still think you're better suited going with a 2-back look, and to me, Estime and Tyree are the 2 best backs, but you can't discount Logan Diggs catching 3 passes for 65 yards and a touchdown last week, looked really good running the wheel route. And then he ran 10 times for 50 yards as well. So Tommy Rees, Marcus Freeman has said all along, we've got 3 backs, we're going to use them. They've all been pretty good by and large the last 3 games especially.
So part of the reason why you want to use 2 backs is because, like you go in 21 personnel, 22 personnel, it's because you have really good backs, but also it's because Notre Dame's a little bit limited at the receiver position in terms of talent and depth. And they got your lowest grade here with the D.
Yeah, I don't think you can argue this either. Lorenzo Styles has, I think it's 16 catches for 221 yards and a touchdown. If you add up the rest of Notre Dame's wide receiver numbers, which, by the way, the only other three wide receivers that have caught a pass are Matt Salerno, Braden Lenzy, Jaden Thomas. Those guys have combined for 13 catches, and I think it's somewhere around the 150-yard mark. You'd love that to be your number two wide receiver if that's one guy, but that's three guys. And they're just not getting enough out of anyone not named Lorenzo Styles. So it's a failing grade. It's a D. I was hesitant to put an F because F just looks a whole lot better than D, but you're right. This is the lowest grade. And I don't think there's any question that across both sides of the ball, the Notre Dame wide receiver unit right now is probably this team's worst position group.
Yeah, Notre Dame certainly is. Like the one area I'll give them a pass a little bit is like Notre Dame is just using the tight ends and running backs a lot more. So that's more the focal point of the offense. But then the counter to that is, well, that's because the receivers aren't that great. So,
Right.
yeah, Lenzy is Notre Dame at the wide receiver position. Lenzy is Notre Dame's second leading receiver. I think it was 7 catches for like 69 yards.
Yeah.
So that's not ideal through.
Not nice. That is not nice.
Not nice. I see what you did there, Mr. Horka. The tight ends, I think this one in your article, again, Tyler, for each of these offensive position groups, Tyler had an article to go with it. You can find it at blueandgold.com, $1 for 1 year premium access. You explained why it was a C plus because Michael Mayer's been, Notre Dame's best player this season. So you would think, this grade should be higher, but this is just like with quarterback. This is the whole position group and not just one player.
Yeah, and you thought that this would be one of Notre Dame's deepest positions, but all of a sudden, Mitchell Evans, we haven't seen him all year because of his foot fracture. Kevin Bauman, the number 2 tight end through the first 3 games, goes down with an ACL injury. Kane Barong had an ACL injury last year. We haven't really seen him get into the mix offensively. So then you're left with, right now, Mayer and 2 true freshmen who Holden Stays got a start last weekend. I thought Eli Raridan looked really good. He's the number 2 run blocker on the team. And I know he's only played about 30, maybe 40 snaps, but it's Joe Alt and then it's Eli Raridan when you look at Pro Football Focus's run blocking grades. So that's good company if you're Eli Raridan. But right now you're looking at kind of a one-man unit because those guys are unproven and because you just lost Kevin Bauman, which, by the way, this factors into the C plus as well. Kevin Bauman played 75 snaps, and he was the second to last run blocker on the team. And there's 24 players who have garnered PFF run blocking grades for the Notre Dame offense. He was number 23. Number 24, Davis Sherwood, who is also technically a tight end. We see him play fullback. So that's factoring into the C plus here. Run blocking is a huge thing for Notre Dame. We just talked about the running backs and how much Notre Dame wants to run the ball. If you can't have a guy out there at tight end who can pull off the line of scrimmage, go get downfield, find a hat, and put a block on somebody, then you're doing it wrong. Bauman wasn't the best at that. The numbers will show it. Say what you want about Pro Football Focus, but that's a big enough sample size and a body of work to show maybe he needed some improvement there. So again, there's room for improvement here, just like with the quarterbacks. This C plus could shoot up to an A if Eli Raridan is as good of a run blocker as his short sample size right now suggests, and if Michael Mayer keeps being Michael Mayer, because you can't discount, I think it's 22 catches for 233 yards and 3 touchdowns. That leads Notre Dame in receiving across the board.
I mean, everyone just at night, just say a prayer and thank Jesus for Michael Mayer because he's been so good. Like, just imagine where this Irish offense would be without him. And his run blocking grade, I've pulled up 71.1. Like that's a
Gotten a lot better. I mentioned that in the article as well. Yeah. He's gotten better.
And then you mentioned my boy Joe Alt. Everyone knows I love him. I think him specifically, he gets an A+++. But this unit as a whole, Tyler, C+.
Yeah, I guess I'm just giving out C pluses here. But I think Notre Dame fans, you can't be a prisoner of the moment, right? We can't just say this offense is an A because they just racked up 567 yards against North Carolina and they look like one of the best offenses in the country. Incredibly balanced too, 289 passing yards, 287 rushing yards. That was one game. We have to remember that this is a team that beat Cal a week before that by getting less than 300 yards offensively. You don't want to have less than 300 yards in any game. Usually that spells a loss. Against Cal, it was a win. Against Ohio State, the offense was bad. Against Marshall, Notre Dame lost because the offense was bad. So the offensive line had a lot to do with that early in the season. They just weren't moving people. You can't go into a game against Marshall, a MAC team at home, and lose the line of scrimmage, because I think it's a common consensus. Everyone has said Notre Dame probably lost the line of scrimmage in that game. So, sort of like with the quarterbacks, the first 2 games, really poor. The last 2 games have been really good for the offensive line. I think Joe Alt's one of the best tackles in the country. If Blake Fisher can find a way to rise his game up to that, you're bookended by 2 rising superstars. Joe Alt might be a superstar right now as a sophomore. I know Mike Singer would nod his head and say yes. Zeke Correll getting better. Jarrett Patterson quietly playing at almost an All-American level. And then Josh Lugg hasn't done enough to say, I wrote this in the article, what the heck is that guy doing out there? I think he's been good enough. So this is very much a position group on the right track, on the rise, continually getting better.
I feel like the offensive line is like a car. If like one thing is not working, your car,
Yeah.
like one important thing in your car is not working, it's just not going to work at all. So it's like, how did Notre Dame's offensive line go from being an like a D to now like an A, and it averages out as C plus?
Right.
It's like, yeah, that part in that offensive line, whatever it was, got fixed, and now the unit's clicking.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of Harry Heastand showing these guys on film saying, what the heck was that? Like, how do you let this guy go unblocked through the middle? Zeke Correll, you need to be communicating with Josh Lugg, that type of thing. It's almost like they flipped the switch. And for Notre Dame's sake, yeah, and you talk about the offensive line being a car. The whole offense is a car as well, and the offensive line is one of the most important parts. So as the offensive line goes, the Notre Dame offense goes. We saw that against Cal. We saw that against North Carolina.
Tyler, I know you are at your folks' house. Why don't you go
Yeah.
ahead and tilt your camera up? I know
Yeah, I
you
want to
want
show the
to show
people
this off.
here. So my stepdad was raised in Northern California. Huge Joe Montana fan. Not really a Notre Dame fan, but you see the jersey there. That's Jerry Rice over there, and then Joe Montana here, signed, autographed. I know a lot of Notre Dame fans who are watching this video would probably love to have that as a prized possession, because I know
Throw it up on eBay. Throw it up on eBay, Tyler.
what's that?
So throw it up on eBay. Your
Yeah,
stepdad doesn't even
no,
know.
my stepdad would kill me.
All right, we won't have him do that because we like Tyler and his YouTube content and at blueandgold.com as well. So, Tyler, appreciate your time. And for folks watching on YouTube, appreciate you as well. Please hit that thumbs up and, of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel before you get out of here, and head to blueandgold.com for Tyler's articles on these position groups and so much more.